Welcome to Daily Armor. Today we're going to be in the book of Romans, chapter number 4, looking at verse 21. Romans chapter number 4, looking at verse 21. And before we even read the text, I want to say that we've been discussing the promises of the Lord, and we began with several promises, and we didn't hit all of them. There are so many. But we hit some of the promises that the Lord says He's going to keep His promise based on nothing but Him. And then we moved on to some promises that we have that we can stand on, but they are conditional. He says, if you will do this, then I will do this. So we talked about several, and we didn't hit on every one of them. We just hit a few of them. That He has some things are conditional. And today I want us to end our little set of devotions on promises with ending with promises that we make, and how that it's kind of dangerous for us to make a promise to the Lord, and that we really, really need to think about what we say before we say it. And I want to start out with Romans 4:21, because when He says something, He is fully able to do it. And that's kind of what we need to really, anything else that you get out of this devotion, remember that whatever God says, He is able. And when we say something, sometimes we fall short and we're not able, or we get more than what we bargained for. So let's look at Romans 4 and look at verse number 21. And it says, and being fully persuaded that what He had promised, He was able also to perform. And I want to give you an example of a promise that somebody made, a vow to the Lord. And a vow is simply stating a promise. Lord, I promise this. If you'll do this, then I'll do this. And that's kind of one of those things where I'm not saying that you never ever should do that. I'm just saying you really, really need to be very, very, very careful, and make sure that you are absolutely sure about what you're saying. And this is one of those instances where we're going to be looking in the book of Judges. If you want to turn there, look in the book of Judges, chapter number 11. And it's taken me several days of looking over this text, having a lot of questions, and really, really having to dig deep into the verses. And there was several different ways that people took this. But I even asking the pastor for, kind of what he thought, and us discussing it, him looking at it, him studying about it some, because it's going to be a text you might not be very familiar with. I wasn't very familiar with it. I run across it in Hebrews chapter 11, this man's name in Hebrews chapter 11, which I've been doing on Wednesday nights with the youth group, and so it got me curious, and I was studying more about him. But let's get into the text, and you'll see what I mean. So in Judges chapter number 11. If you're just meeting him at first in chapter number 11, we'll start with who he is. Let me see, I'm in the wrong chapter here. Let me back up a page because I don't have my reading glasses on. All right, so chapter 11, verse number 1, and it says, now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, and he was the son of a harlot, and Gilead begat Jephthah. So we know who he is. We've been introduced to him. Some things happened over the course of life. He was the son of a harlot, which means that he was born out of wedlock. Then Jephthah's dad, actually, his wife had children. And when they got older, they decided to kick out their oldest brother because they said, you're illegitimate. You don't count. You don't get to take part in our dad's, in our dad's stuff. You don't get to be a part of our family. And they actually kick him out. And so his younger siblings feel threatened by him, and they want him out. They don't want him to be the oldest, and they think they've got something to stand on by sending him away because he was born illegitimately. So whenever you move on through the text, then it says, then the children of Ammon come up against the Israelites. They come up against them, and they're getting worried, and they're getting panicked, and they decide to go after their oldest brother to ask him to come back and fight with them, because he was a mighty, reading the text, it says he was a mighty man of valor. So this was a very strong man. This was a very mighty man of valor. Means he was very good in battle. He was probably a very good leader. And they have chosen to call on him to ask him to come back. And he's like, you didn't even want me. You kicked me out. Now you want me to come back. And so when you read through the text, he does come back, and he does agree to be their captain and lead them into battle. And then if we skip on down, I want you to notice, if we skip on down to verse number, we can kind of start here at verse number 7, and just so you get a little idea of what's going on. And Jephthah said unto the elders of Gilead, Did not ye hate me and expel me out of my father's house? And why are you come unto me now when ye are in distress? And the elders of Gilead said unto Jephthah, Therefore we turn again to thee now, that thou mayest go with us and fight against the children of Ammon, and be our head over all of the inhabitants of Gilead. And Jephthah said unto the elders of Gilead, If ye bring me home again to fight against the children of Ammon, and the Lord deliver them before me, shall I be your head? He's saying, you're going to make me captain? And the elders of Gilead said unto Jephthah, The Lord be witness between us, if we do not so according to thy words. Then Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and captain over them. And Jephthah uttered all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. So we see here that he agrees to come back and to lead them into battle against the Ammonites. But we see here that if you skip on down to verse number 29, so there in the rest of these verses between that, he's talking to the king of Ammon, who's making a quarrel against them. They're wanting their land back. They're saying that y'all took it, and he's saying we didn't take it. Y'all didn't let us pass through, and you made war against us, and our God gave us the victory. And so it was you started it, and our God finished it. And so they're arguing back and forth. And it says here in verse number 29 or 28, it says, Howbeit the king of the children of Ammon hearkened not unto the words of Jephthah, which he sent him. So he's saying they're arguing, and they're still going to go to battle. And so now we look at verse number 29, and we're going to look at how it looks like it's a battle is going to happen. It's not going to be settled. It's going to take place. And we look here in verse 29, it says, Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah. The Spirit of the Lord was with him. So he had the Lord on his side. And just like the battle before, years and years ago, when they were just trying to pass through because the Lord was leading them to the promised land, and they made war against the children of Israel, God was with them, and God allowed them to have the victory because God was with them. And just like that, just like back then, here now it's saying the Spirit of the Lord was with him, that they had, the Lord was with him. It means they were going to be having the victory again. So it says, and he passed over Gilead and Manasseh, and passed over Mizpah of Gilead, and from Mizpah of Gilead he passed over unto the children of Ammon. So he's heading into battle. They're wanting to make war. He tried to talk it out with them. He tried to reason with them. They weren't going to hear of it, and so now he's going into battle. And the Lord comes up. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon him. The Lord is with him, and that's when he makes a move forward. And when it gets almost time for battle, it says, And Jephthah vowed a vow unto the Lord, and said, If thou shalt without fail deliver the children of Ammon into mine hands, then it shall be that whatsoever cometh forth of the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace from the children of Ammon shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. So he's making a vow. He's like, Lord, if you'll give us the victory. The Lord was already with them. But then he says, but Lord, if you'll give us the victory, then I'm going to give you this. The first thing that comes when I go home, the first thing that comes, that's what I'm going to give you. And so then it says in verse 32, So Jephthah passed over unto the children of Ammon in the fight against them, and the Lord delivered them into his hands. Now, do you think the Lord delivered him into his hands because he made the vow, or because the Spirit of the Lord was already with them? The Spirit of the Lord was already with them. A vow was not required. God would have let him know that if something was required, if there was an if and then a then, if you do this, then I will do this, he would have let them know. But here, Jephthah is he's maybe nervous, he's maybe excited, maybe he's just caught up in the moment. It says he's a mighty man of valor. He's not afraid, he's not fearful. When they went to go get their brother, it wasn't because he was a fearful man. It was because he was a mighty man of valor. So this is not a fearful man, but yet he felt like that he needed to give the Lord something. And sometimes we feel like that we need to give the Lord something when he's saying, but I've already given you everything. All I am asking is for you to move forward into battle and let me give you the victory. And so many times we think we need to add to salvation, or we need to add to what the Lord's done. I know that when I first got saved and I had some horrible things that the Lord had forgiven me for, and I was still trying to make up for them. I was still trying to do good to make up for them. And I remember one of Todd's preacher friends, really wonderful friend of his, we went to go hear him preach up in the mountains, and he preached that night on how the blood is sufficient. And he said, somebody thinks that they have to make up for what they've done when the blood's already been applied, and you're saying the blood isn't enough. And Jephthah here is saying, Lord, you're with us, but just in case you need something extra, I'm going to make a vow unto you. So we need to be very, very, very careful. A vow was not required. There's nothing else required. When the Lord does something, when he shows up to do something, there's nothing that we can do to add to it, because he's already done everything. He's going to give the victory. He was going to give the victory in this area, in this time period. He was going to give the victory over the Ammonites. He was going to be giving them the victory, and a vow was not required. And so he spoke, and well doing, he was trying to do the right thing and to say the right thing. But then let's look at when it was time to pay the vow, and he did. But it cost him more than what he thought it was going to cost him. So we move on here to, I'm going to get my reader so it's a little easier for me to read. It says that, let's see, so they get the victory. So Jephthah passed over unto the children of Ammon to fight against them, and the Lord delivered them into his hands. And then we go on down, and it says, and Jephthah came to Mizpah unto his house. So now it's the battle's over, the victory's been won, he's headed home. And behold, his daughter came out to meet him with timbrels and with dances, and she was his only child. Beside her, he had neither son nor daughter. That's very important that those details were mentioned in this verse. That this was his only child, and beside her, he had neither son nor daughter. I think that because he was a mighty man of valor, that possibly, now this is just my opinion, possibly Jephthah had been injured sometime in battle, and he was not able to have any more children. This was his only child. And that something happened between after she was born and before, after that he was injured in some kind of capacity where he was not able to have any more children. Because it mentions that it gives some detail, and it says his only child, beside her he had neither son nor daughter. And verse number 35, it says, and it came to pass when he saw her that he rent his clothes. Why did he rent his clothes when he sees his daughter? She is so excited that he's come home from battle. He's come home okay. And she's excited. She's got timbrels. She's dancing. She's excited. She's out there to greet him. But that vow that he made to the Lord was that he was going to set aside whatever came out to meet him first. And maybe he thought it was going to be some things in his flock. If he possibly had, sheep or goats or whatever, then when he comes walking in, they're going to recognize his voice, they're going to recognize his smell, and they're going to come out to greet him thinking that he's going to be there to feed them. And he was saying, I will offer one of these. Maybe that he thought it was going to be somebody that worked for him that would come out to meet him, that would be working out in the field, and he was going to say, I'm going to consecrate this to the Lord. This was going to be consecrated to the Lord, set aside for the Lord, and Lord, I'm going to give you this because you gave us the victory. But that's not what happened. It was his daughter, his only daughter. No other son, no other daughter did he have, nor apparently could he have. And so she was going to be set aside for the Lord because that was his vow. He said that, and it came to pass when he saw her, he rent his clothes and said, Alas, my daughter, thou hast brought me very low, and thou art one of them that trouble me, for I have opened my mouth unto the Lord, and I cannot go back. That's the thing I want us to be careful of, that we don't open our mouth unto the Lord in just either out of fear that we say something, Lord, out of fear, if you will, if you will cure me of this cancer, then I will get back in church, or I will do this, or I will do that. And we're saying things out of fear. And then if the Lord does that, then you're required to do your part. And you are required to do your part. The reason I chose Romans 4:21 is because when Jesus says, when God says, when the Holy Spirit says something, they are fully able to do their part. And they know all of the consequences. They know all of the details. When Jesus said he was going to be the sacrifice for me and for you, he knew what that was going to cost him. He knew what he was going to have to go through. He knew the torture. He knew the beatings. He knew the lashings. He knew the crown of thorns that was going to pierce his brow. I mean, just horrible pain that he underwent. And he knew that in advance. And still he said, I'm going to do this. And he was fully aware, and he was fully able to perform it, to do it. And here, Jephthah is fully able to do what he said, but it wasn't what he thought. I don't believe that was his intention. That he was willing to set aside his daughter for the Lord. And here, it sounds like that, when you read the text, that he needs to offer her up as a burnt offering, but I don't really believe that's what it means. I think that, and look here at verse number 35, and I'll explain this a little further. It says, and it came to pass when he saw her that he rent. Let me move on down to verse 36. And she said unto him, My father, if thou hast opened thy mouth unto the Lord, do to me according to that which hath proceeded out of thy mouth. For as much as the Lord hath taken vengeance for thee of thine enemies, even of the children of Ammon. And she said unto her father, Let this thing be done for me. Let me alone 2 months, that I may go up and down upon the mountains and bewail my virginity, I and my fellows. And here fellows means her companions. So she would have taken some of her friends with her, and she was going up not to bewail, and bewail means she's going to grieve over her virginity. She was going to be grieving over some things. She wasn't going to be grieving over her life. He wasn't going to be offering her as a burnt sacrifice. First of all, a burnt sacrifice would have been taken to a priest, and a priest is not going to murder this man's daughter. That's not what that's talking about. But to be set apart, to be set aside for the Lord. And what this means is that she was not going to be given into marriage, and she was not going to be she was going to remain a virgin, and possibly would even go to the temple to serve like some of the other ladies did, and serving the Lord in duties there. And she was going to be set apart for the Lord. And this meant also that she wasn't going to be able to bear children, but then she wasn't going to be able to bear grandchildren for her father. He was giving up grandchildren. He was giving up, his bloodline was going to stop with him and her. It was going to stop right there, because he has set her, now he's going to set her apart for the Lord, and he's going to sacrifice any other, grandchildren that she could give him so that the bloodline could continue. It would, it would be through a daughter, but still there would be a continuation. And so all of it is going to stop with her. And this was his vow that he said. If you look back at the vow, and it says, verse number 31, then it shall be that whatsoever cometh forth of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, shall surely be the Lord's. Shall surely be the Lord's. This was going to be for the Lord. And there would have been, I feel like that wouldn't have been for her to have been sacrificed, because I don't feel like that's what would have taken place. And I could be wrong, but I did, look at different things, and I really, going by she's bewailing her virginity, not her life. And she's accepting what has taken place, that, her dad has, he's, in his words, opened his mouth unto the Lord, and he can't go back. And so she's going to be set aside and set apart, and not to be that family woman, and to have that family and to give him those grandchildren. And she could have possibly gave him just so many grandchildren that his bloodline would have continued through her for years and years and years to come. But it was going to stop, and he was giving up that, and he was also asking her to give up that, and she freely accepted that. She freely was that obedient child and that respectful child, and she was willing to do that because her dad had made a vow to the Lord, and she wanted him to keep his part, and she accepted what she had done. But the whole point of the story is going back to that Romans 4:21, and being fully persuaded that what he had promised, he was able also to perform. What God promises, what Jesus promised, he is able to perform it. And we need to be very, very careful about any kind of promises that we make on our part, because God will require us to do our part. And we may not fully understand what it meant. We may not fully grasp the whole totality of what we have promised. But when it comes time, it will be required, because when we make a promise, then he expects us to keep our promise as well. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.